What's up everyone, and welcome to another Warframe video. So as you may know, recently there has been another update to the game, and with it came a new quest, Octavia's Anthem. Now I have finished the quest, and without creating any spoilers, I can say that it was quite enjoyable, it was quite musical, and if you are doing the quest and you come to the last mission, make sure you have about 1 hour open because it will take quite a bit of time to complete that final mission. And for completing the quest, you are rewarded with a blueprint for a new frame, which is Octavia. Now if you had heard from the rumors and the information that D has provided up till now with regards to this new frame, then you do know that this is a barge frame. And since it is a barge frame, then not only is the quest musical, but the follow-up gameplay that you get when you have this frame is also quite musical. And there are quite a number of interesting additions that have been put in just for the sake of this frame. So similar to Nidus, when you got that frame, you got a lot of other perks with it. You do get some interesting perks with this frame, and these perks are not always associated with the battles or the fighting of the frame, although there are some interesting musical relationships with the battle using Octavia. So with regards to the basic stats of Octavia, they're relatively average. So you have reasonable armor, nothing great, nothing bad. You have decent health, again, nothing great, nothing bad. Your power is pretty good, and your shields are kind of low. So overall, Octavia is not particularly a squishy frame, but she's also not a tanky frame. Now in my case, I gave her both vitality and steel fiber just to increase her armor and her health, and I left the shields as it is. So you can imagine that when I use Octavia for battle, then she oftentimes goes to 0 shields, and it's her armor and her decent health that will keep her from getting killed. But overall, she is not a tank, so if you go in full front attack with her, then she may get taken down pretty easily. Now what does help her stay alive are her abilities, and her abilities are quite defense related and also support related. And unfortunately, I still don't have a good feel with regards to a lot of these abilities. I do notice that sometimes they're extremely effective at taking down the enemy while defending Octavia, but other times I just find that it's just not working and she just literally gets one shot by really high level enemies. So I'm not exactly sure what I'm doing wrong, but they are quite interesting abilities to say the least. Also, as Octavia is the barge frame, you can imagine that all her abilities are musical based. Now her first ability, Mallet, is her only attack ability, and it is quite interesting. It is quite effective if you set it up and mod it up properly. What it does is she sends out a little sphere of a rhythmic sound, and for every beat that the little sphere makes, it will damage all the nearby enemies. Now what's interesting is it also draws the enemy's fire. So as it absorbs the fire, it increases the damage to the enemies. So the stronger the enemy and the stronger the attack, the greater the damage from Mallet's beat. Now the specific beat that's played by Mallet all depends upon the music that Octavia chooses for that time. So you have a certain type of music loaded up, and the mallet will actually play based upon the beat, percussion beat of that music that you've chosen. Okay, Octavia, I know you're having fun. Okay, so to see how Mallet works against an enemy, let's try it out against a level 100 Corrupted Butcher. So, as you can see, the Mallet drew the Butcher away, but it's not completely perfect in that sense that it can still come and attack you. However, as you noticed, as the Butcher attacked the Mallet basically took it out. So, yeah, I mean, a level 100 Butcher can relatively easily be taken out by Mallet. Finally, if you tried against 10 corrupted butchers rather than 1, then you could start seeing how Mallet works within its sphere of influence. So it does have a range and affects all of the enemy within that range. So it doesn't have to be the one that attacks the Mallet. As you can see, all of these level 100 butchers basically have been taken out instantaneously. So you could see the effectiveness of Mallet. So long as it gets hit by a very strong attack, then it can dish out some pretty serious damage. Now, because I haven't tested out Octavia too long yet, this may be my imagination, but since Mallet's damage comes out for every beat that it creates, then depending upon what sort of speed your musical score is, Mallet seems to actually give more or less damage. So the faster the musical score, the more damage that Mallet will actually bring out, because of course your pseudo fire rate of Mallet increases with this. Now again, I've only tested it a few times. I have noticed that there's a lot more damage coming out to extremely fast music. However, I haven't tried it out long enough, so please take this with a grain of salt. Now, Octavia's second power or ability is Resonator. And what Resonator is kind of a portable Pied Piper for the enemy. And what it does is it creates an even bigger sphere, almost like a roller ball, and it roams all over the place. And as it creates or plays music to the enemy get attracted to it, and all it does is it kind of gathers the enemy, and the enemy kind of mindlessly follows the roller ball around. So it's a nice way to be able to draw the fire away from you. And in fact, the enemy not only draws the fire away, it literally stops firing and just kind of mindlessly follows the roller ball like a zombie. Now what's interesting is if you combine Resonator with Mallet, then the roller ball will gather the Mallet sphere and then move around with it. So as the enemy is following the roller ball around like a zombie, the Mallet is kind of dealing damage out with every beat that it plays. Okay, so if we go back to Octavia again, and now she casts Resonator with Mallet, as you notice, that little roller ball has picked up that Mallet sphere and now is moving around. So right now I of course don't have any enemies, but if there was any enemy nearby, then it would be probably following this Mallet roller ball the way Octavia is doing right now. And as the Mallet continues to beat, of course the enemy will receive damage from it. Okay, so before I show how Mallet and Resonator work together against an enemy, I wanted to introduce one more ability, and I want to skip the third ability for the moment and go straight to the fourth one, which is Amp. And Amp is a buff ability, and it's a multiple buff ability. So the first thing it buffs is your weapons, and depending upon what mods you put on your frame, you can buff your weapon all the way up to like 700% or so, actually more than that, according to Noob Showtech and his video on Octavia. Now that's not the only thing that of course gets affected. It also buffs the range, and it doubles actually the range and effectiveness of your Mallet. So if you combine Resonator, Mallet, and Amp together, then you get a huge area of influence and doubling of the damage from Mallet. And as you've noticed, Mallet is pretty effective on its own. If it's doubled, it's even more effective than the examples that I've shown before. Okay, so this time let's have Octavia go up against 10 level 100 corrupted Moas. And she will use Mallet with Resonator this time, and she will use Amp to amplify it. And as you can see, all of the Moas are now gathering around the Resonator, and even though I'm standing right nearby, they're not noticing me, they're just drawn towards the Resonator. Now what you also see is Mallet's not doing anything, and she had to throw in another Mallet, and now it's damaging. And yeah, they're all killed now. So yeah, when it works really well. And with Amp, you can notice that the area of influence is huge. You see this ring that shows you where the area of influence is, and it's gigantic. And so yeah, if you have some range mods on and you use amp and you use resonator and you use mallet, you can clear out some pretty decent number of enemies. And this leaves us with her third ability, Metronome. And what Metronome does is, once cast, it gives Octavia and her teammates a chance to buff certain capabilities depending upon certain actions that they synchronize with the beat of the music. So what it does is it will give you a graphic representation of the musical beat, and depending upon certain actions that are timed with this beat, both Octavia and her teammates can obtain certain ability buffs. Okay, so the first of these buffs is called Vivis, and for any frame that jumps to the beat of the music, Metronome will give that frame a speed buff for up to 15 seconds. The next one, Nocturne, is a popular buff in that crouching to the beat of the music, Metronome will give that frame invisibility buff for up to 15 seconds. Opera is a weapons buff, and by shooting your ranged weapon to the beat of the music, it will give that weapon a multi-shot bonus for up to 15 seconds. And finally, Forte, which is a melee weapon buff, by striking the enemy to the beat of the music, it will give a damage buff to that melee weapon for up to 15 seconds. So you can imagine, depending upon how rhythmically you do your battles, you can get multiple buffs out of this one specific ability. Now, although this is a team buff, each one of the team players will have to do their own striking or moving or crouching or jumping to the beat of the music to actually receive their own buff. Okay, so to give an example of the pros and cons of Metronome to somebody who's not musically inclined, here is Octavia doing Nocturne's invisibility. And as you can see, she can maneuver very well, so she's not constricted the way Ivara would be. Also, although I said 15 seconds max, that's if you're unmodded. If you put duration mods into this, then you could actually make her invisibility longer than that of Loki's or Ash's. So that shows you how strong her invisibility can be. Now here is the disadvantage. Yeah, if you're not musically inclined, you have to do this to basically go back to being invisible again. And can you imagine doing that while surrounded by a ton of enemies that's trying to kill you? Hopefully they're all mesmerized by your resonator and they won't kill you, but I would be extremely worried about doing that right in the middle of the game while trying to get invisible. So as you can see, everything Octavia does really revolves around music, and so the question is where does she get that music? And that's where the Mandicord comes in. So the Mandicord is Octavia's musical instrument that you get during the middle of the quest, and with it the player can modify or edit the music that is played during Octavia's battles. And this is what the edit window looks like once you're in the game and have this instrument. And so you could change kind of the rhythm area, the music melody area, and by doing so you could actually create your own music specific to your battle. Now what's interesting is for people who aren't musically inclined, such as myself, you could actually go into the chat section and every once in a while somebody will post their creation, during the chat, and if you wanted to, you could download or upload, I should say, their music and replace the default music with the one that you heard in the chat. And you can save up to like 5 musical pieces, and so you could switch them around depending upon what your moods are. So of course, outside of even the battles, this command accord creates a additional entertainment section for Octavia. And now there are these musical jukeboxes that are located in the relays, and if you wanted to gather with all the other frames and play your favorite music, then Octavia and the other frames can just go wild. Yeah, interesting perk. Now as far as her loadout, I currently have 3 formats on her, and I've balanced it between some defensive mods like Vitality and Steel Fiber, strength mods, duration mods, which are very important, as well as range mods. So I have Intensify and Transient Fortitude for, of course, strength, prime continuity, constitution, and narrow-minded for duration, and stretch so far for range. Now, if you're not interested in her defensive mods, then you could put overextended and extend that range, and her abilities may be able to protect her better than something like Vitality or Steel Fiber. I tend to still like the defensive mods, but of course, depending upon the situation, I may put overextended in as well. The other thing you might be able to put in is your efficiency mod like Streamline. It may not be necessary because of her passive, which is to give her some energy back according to the beat of the music, but from my experience, I found that it doesn't really give enough energy back fast enough, and so I still tend to look into things like efficiency mods. Now, I do use a Zenuric, so I don't need Streamline all that much, but for other people that might become quite useful. So I'm not exactly sure, again, which one is the best loadout, but I do find that duration, strength, and range are definitely useful for her. Now some additional points. I'm having Octavia right now go up against 10 level 100 bombards just to show. Here I've loaded up a faster music than the default. This is actually somebody's Mortal Kombat music. And as you can see, since Mallet goes by the beat of the music, you can see that the damage is going a lot faster than the default. So in general, it would indicate that faster music might be more advantageous, although it may end up becoming really difficult then to do metronome if you want to go invisible. Also, be careful, since I found that although Mallet and Resonator does draw the fire away, it's not 100% foolproof, and you can get literally blown away quickly. But of course, that's if you just stand around and let her abilities do all the work. And since everybody is kind of gathered together, all the enemy anyway, due to Resonator, then what it turns out is that area effect weapons work really well. So maybe something like a Zar or a Tonkor if you're alone. But in this case, I was using a Pox, and by using the gas effects from the Pox, it was able to take out a lot of the enemy all at once. And so, yeah, I mean, if you have your weapons, buffed, especially with Amp, you use Mallet as well as Resonator. And even if you can use Metronome and go invisible, then you are in a very good position to take out a lot of relatively high level enemies. Also, since all of her battles are dependent upon all this music, the battlefield can get pretty busy and loud, especially if there's more than one Octavia in the battlefield. And right now it might be very interesting to see all of these music going around because it's so new, but I got a feeling that once everything wears off, there's going to be some players who aren't Octavia in the battle who might find all of this to be quite irritating sometimes. But anyway, one thing nice about this is, of course, the volume of the music and everything can be adjusted, and that makes things a lot easier to tolerate, I guess. So yeah, it will be interesting to see how all of this music is accepted by many other players who are out there who either don't have Octavia or are not playing Octavia or are not fond of Octavia, because it does make the battlefield quite lively, to say the least. Okay, so that finishes up this video for Octavia. I hope you found the video informative, and I thank you as always for watching the video. If you have any comments and more information about this frame, please post it in the comment section below. I would appreciate any additional information or criticism or advice that you may have. One other thing, I will post the link to Noob Showtech's video that talks about a lot of the abilities from his perspective. And I always like Noob Showtech's videos because they are quite informative. Anyway, it's been a pleasure making these videos for you. We'll continue on with Warframe videos in the future, and until the next video comes out, we wish you all the best, and as always, Jaya, nice day everyone.